And today we're going to be starting 2.2, which is about dividing integers. Pull out your red pens for me, and I want you to go ahead and fill in these next 4 blanks that you see there. The rules that we have today for dividing integers are the same exact rules that we've had for multiplying integers that we've talked about the last couple days in class. If you have an even number of negative signs, your answer will always be positive. If you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer will always be negative. So there is going to be a quiz on Friday, and it's going to be about multiplying and dividing integers. It will also be about chapter 1, just adding and subtracting some of those integers too. I want you to look at this first example I have here. Negative 10 divided by negative 2. How many negative numbers are there?
2.
There's 2. That's an even number. So is my answer going to be positive or negative?
Positive.
It's going to be positive. So what's 10 divided by 2?
5.
5. So my answer is going to be positive 5. Go ahead and pull out your pencil and put that there. Now, once again, it says here it's a positive quotient. Remember, a quotient is just the answer for a division problem. Let's look down here. I've got a separate example. Negative 12 divided by 3. How many negative signs do you see?
1.
Only 1. Is the number 1 odd or even? Odd. And the rule says if you have an odd amount of negative signs, your answer has to be negative. So what's the answer?
Negative 4.
-4. All right, now we're going to do quite a few problems that are using this rule here. First one, Ariana, negative 18 divided by negative 6. How many negative numbers are there? 2. The number 2 is even, so is my answer going to be positive or negative?
Positive.
It is going to be positive, so what's the answer?
Positive 3.
Positive 3 is correct. Remember, go ahead and box in that answer directly underneath the problem. On to the next one, Emma, negative 32 divided by negative 4. How many negative signs do you see? 2. Is my answer going to be positive or negative?
Positive.
It will be positive. What's the answer? Very good, positive 8. Next one, Chloe, 14 divided by 2. How many negative signs do you see?
0.
There aren't any, okay? So my answer has to be positive. The number 0 is an even number. So what is 14 divided by 2?
6.
Close.
What? That's not 6? I didn't do nothing.
All right, 7 it is. Next one, Alexis, negative 40 divided by negative 8. Positive 5 is correct because we had 2 negatives. Our answer has to be positive. Let's move on to problem E. Miley, 75 divided by negative 25. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. Anytime I have 25s, I like to think about quarters. So just count by 25s until you get to 75. What's your answer?
3.
You are correct. So the answer is negative 3. AJ, 0 divided by negative 6.
0.
0 is correct. Remember, a lot of times people will tell me the answer is negative 0. I will mark partial credit off if you tell me negative 0. Why is that, guys?
Because 0 can't be negative or positive.
You are correct. 0 cannot be positive or negative. Going on to the next one, Thomas, negative 54 divided by 6. Negative 9 is correct. And Hayden, final one, 21 divided by negative 3.
Negative 7.
Negative 7 is very good. Okay, so you guys have done an excellent job remembering the rule. If I have an even number of negative signs, my answer will always be positive. If I have an odd number of negative signs, my answer will always be negative. You need to have that rule memorized. There will be true and false questions on your quiz this Friday and then on your test next Wednesday about that. Now let's do something else. This says evaluate the expression when x equals 8 and y equals negative 4. Whenever I have problems like this, I like to go ahead and circle what x is and what y is. That just helps it to stand out a little bit more to me when I am plugging them in. So when I have a problem like this, I want to get rid of the x's and the y's, or the letters that are there. Before we do that, I want to talk about this right here. When it says 2y, when there is a number directly next to a letter, does that mean to add, subtract, multiply, or divide the 2 and the y together? We're multiplying them. Whenever you have a number next to a letter, that means 2 times y. So remember that as we plug this in. All right, repeat after me. Plug it in, plug it in.
Plug it in, plug it in.
Hope, what am I plugging in for my x?
8.
And 8 is correct. Over 2 times y. So what am I going to be writing there?
2 times negative 4.
You are correct. 2 times negative 4. Now, it doesn't appear as if there's any work I need to do in the numerator, but there is some work I need to do in the denominator. Hope, what is 2 times negative 4? Negative 8 is correct. So when I drop it down underneath here, I'm going to have 8 divided by negative 8. Now I'm just going to draw a little arrow, or you can do an equal sign. Hope, is my answer going to be positive or negative?
Negative.
It will be negative because there's only one negative sign there. And then what is 8 divided by 8? 1. Okay, so the correct answer is -1 because I have to keep that negative sign there. Excellent job. Rodney, let's go on to the next one. Problem B, -x². So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that negative and drop it down. Now what am I plugging in for my x? 8 squared, okay? You can put a little parentheses here if you want, but notice I am not squaring the negative. I just dropped the negative down, okay? Rodney, what should I do next? Good job. Drop down plus 12 and drop down divide by, and what should I plug in for the y? -4. Now here's what sometimes people might do. They might take parentheses and put it around this. That doesn't mean that they're multiplying. It just means, hey guys, this is a negative number. Here's why. It can get confusing if you have a divide right next to a negative, okay? So people might get confused. That's why sometimes you might see parentheses there, but you do not have to have parentheses there. So next up, what do you think I should do next, Rodney? E exponents is correct, okay? So I'm going to drop down that negative that's on the outside. And what is 8 squared? Go ahead and underline that part. 64, excellent. It doesn't mean 8 times 2, it means 8 times itself. Now let's drop down everything else. Plus 12 divided by -4. What do you think I should do next, Rodney? Okay, so according to PEMDAS, there's two options here. I'm either going to be dividing this or I'm going to be adding and subtracting that. What comes first in PEMDAS? Divide. So let's go ahead and underline that. And we're going to do our division first. Rodney, what is 12 divided by -4? Okay, we're dividing. So counting by 4s until we get to 12. All right, so we've got 3. And then Rodney, looking at this right here, there's only one negative. So should it be a +3 or a -3? -3, very good. And then I've got to drop down all this stuff over here. So I'm going to drop down -64 plus -3. Do you guys remember this? When I have a positive and a negative side by side with no number in between them, I can get rid of one of those signs. Who always wins out of plus minus? The negative always wins. So I can basically just get rid of this. Let's drop down. I've got -64 minus 3. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing now? Okay, I'm going to have to add these ones together. Remember the rules, same sign, add and keep. If you remember, every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. So they're both negative numbers. I've got to add them together. Rodney, what do you get? 67. And then we're going to keep the sign. So what was the sign I had? It is a negative. So our correct answer is -67. Good job. That was kind of a tough problem. Who would like to do problem C for me? Okay, so first things first, plug it in, plug it in. Instead of x squared, AJ, what will I have? 8 squared. And we're going to put it over a y. What is our y? -4. Do you guys know what it means when there's a fraction bar? It says over.
Divide.
We are going to be dividing, okay? Then AJ, what else do I need to bring down? Plus the 4. Very good. So there's some work to do here on this fraction bar. I've got to do that top number first. What is 8 squared? 64. And then we're still going to divide by -4, and add 4. What do you think I should do first? Should I do this fraction bar first, or should I come over here and do the +4 first? We're going to do the fraction bar because that means to divide. Okay, so if you don't know this in your head, just do it off to the side, 64 divided by 4. You can do it right there on your paper. AJ, what is 64 divided by -4? So 64 divided by 4 is 16, but is my answer going to be negative or positive? It's going to be negative because as I did that right there, there was only 1. That's an odd number, so I've got to keep that negative sign. So I've got -16 plus 4. AJ, same sign or different sign? Different sign. Subtract and take the sign of the larger number. What's your answer? Negative 12 is correct. Because that larger number was negative, we have to take the negative sign. For the first modeling real life problem, it says you measure the height of the tide using the support beams of a pier. The height of the tide is 59 inches at 2 p.m. and 8 inches at 8 p.m. What is the mean hourly change in the height? So the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to come up with something called a verbal model. What a verbal model is basically it's going to be words telling us what kind of numbers we're going to plug in. When we have a problem like this, what you're going to do is you are going to start with what the final thing was. Here we're measuring height, how high up and down that water went. So for our verbal model, I want you guys to go ahead and write final height. Then what we're going to do to find the change is we are going to subtract the initial height. Do you guys know what that word initial means?
Like the beginning.
The beginning, okay? So we're going to take the final height, the one at the end, and subtract the beginning height, the initial height. And then I have to divide it by something. I am going to divide it by the time that it took to do this. So we're going to write time elapsed. That means how long it took for this tide to move up or down. The next part here says substitution. That's one of those plug it in, where instead of taking words, now we're going to plug things in. So did anybody catch what the final height of the tide was? Guys, what was the final height? 8 inches. Okay, so we're plugging in 8 inches. Then up here it tells me I have to subtract. So I'm going to bring down that subtraction, and I'm subtracting the initial height, the height that the water started as. What did the water start as?
59.
It started as 59 inches. And then it says I'm going to put it over, or I'm going to divide it by the time elapsed. If it started at 2 p.m., and the final height was at 8 p.m. How much time elapsed, class?
6 hours.
6 hours. So now we've plugged in, and we're going to use this right here to help us find our answer for the mean hourly change. First things first, let's start with the numerator. Is there any work to do in the numerator?
Yes.
Yes, I've got to subtract 8 minus 59. Same sign or different sign?
Same. Different.
Different sign. Subtract and take. What is 59 minus 8?
51.
51. Take the sign of the larger number.
Negative.
It was a negative. Okay, so as I move it over here to the side, I've got negative 51 inches divided by 6 hours. Now, when it asks me up here, what is the mean hourly change in height? It does not want to know how much happened in 6 hours. It wants to know how much happened in 1 hour. Does anybody know how I would turn 6 into a 1? If I had to divide by a number, what number would I have to divide 6 by to get a 1? I have to divide it by itself, divided by 6. Now, if I'm dividing the bottom number, I'm going to kind of come down here, by 6, I also have to divide the top number by 6. So the first thing we're going to do is negative 51 divided by 6. If I only have one negative number, is my answer going to be positive or negative? It's going to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and put my negative sign here now. And once again, off to the side, you can just kind of come over here and do 51 divided by 6 if you don't know that off the top of your head. All right, when we divide that, what do we get? 8 and 3/6. Okay, can 3/6 be reduced at all? Yes, to what? 1/2. Remember, from now until the end of your math career, you always have to reduce, okay? So we're going to have negative 8.5 inches per, and what would 6 divided by 6 be? 1. Anything divided by itself always equals 1 per 1 hour. So that means every hour, it's dropping 8.5 inches. That's why this is a negative, because it helps me to see. It was 59 inches. It kept getting lower and lower and lower. It's going down 8.5 inches per hour. Okay, so I know that was our first modeling real life type problem doing something like this. Notice you take the final height subtract the beginning or the initial height, and divide it by the time. We're going to do the same thing for our next example. Our next example has to do with a female grizzly bear. At the beginning, she weighed 500 pounds. But after hibernating for 6 months, she only weighs 350 pounds. Did she get bigger or did she get smaller?
Smaller.
She got smaller. So my answer is going to come as a negative because she's losing weight over those 6 months. The question it asks me is, what is the mean monthly change? That means I don't want to know how much she lost in 6 months. I want to know she lost in how many months? In 1 month, okay? So we're going to do it the same way that we did it before. The first one, though, problem A, we did the final height. I don't need to know height now. What do I need to know? The final weight. So everybody go ahead for your verbal model. Let's write final weight. Now, if problem B is going to be done the same way as problem A, can anyone help me to understand what you think I might need to write next for my verbal model?
Initial weight.
Not just initial weight. There's a little sign that's in there.
That's the dash.
Subtract. That dash means subtract. So final weight minus the initial weight. Remind me again, what does initial weight mean? The beginning. Am I done with my verbal model? Or is there some other step I still have to write in there? What do I have to do? Divide it by the... No, I want the words. Look at the verbal model from before. Divide it by the time elapsed, or the time it took to do it. Okay, so remember, the verbal model is simply just coming up with words of how to find this answer. I want you guys to look back through that original problem and see if you can plug in what the final weight was, what the initial weight was, and what the time elapsed was. Okay, as I just walked around, some people were getting kind of mixed up what the final weight was and what the initial weight was. Remember, we are plugging in first the final weight. At the end of this problem, what was the final weight of that grizzly bear? 350. Okay, so we're going to plug that in. We've got 350 pounds minus what? 500 pounds over how much time elapsed or passed? 6 months. So now let's just start with the numerator. What's 350 minus 500? Okay, you subtract it, but what's the larger number? 500. Was that positive or negative? So we've got negative 150 pounds because she lost weight. Over how much time did she lose that weight? 6 months. Remember, keep those units attached to help you. Now, as we go back, it does say, what is the mean monthly change? That means I don't want to know how much she lost in 6 months. I want to know how much she lost in 1 month. How do I find that answer?
Divide it by itself.
Divide it by itself. So we're trying to get that 6 to turn into a 1, so we're going to divide it by 6 on top and 6 on bottom to get that final answer. All right, so I'm taking a negative number and dividing it by a positive number. Should my answer come out negative or positive? It is going to come out negative, so I know for sure I can just go ahead and start off with that negative. If you do not know how to do 150 divided by 6 in your head, just go off to the side and divide it. Guys, what is 150 divided by 6?
Negative 25.
Very good. Okay, so we've got negative 25 pounds per what? 1 month. So what does that mean, negative 25 pounds?
She lost 25 pounds.
She lost 25 pounds every single month for 6 months. Okay? So that's how you do a problem like that. We are going to do another review problem like that tomorrow, but there will be a problem just like this on your quiz on Friday. All right, for the Think, Pair, Share section, as I walked around, most of you did get it correct, and these problems probably seemed pretty simple compared to those modeling real life that we just did. The main thing is, remember the rule. If you have an even number of negative signs, your answer is positive. If you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer is negative. Help me out, class. What's the answer to number 1?
Negative 3.
Negative 3 is correct. How about number 2?
3.
Okay, positive 3, because 6 divided by 2 is 3, and there's 2 negatives, so my answer has to be positive. 15 divided by -3.
-5.
-5, because there was only one negative sign, that's odd, so our answer has to be negative. If you did not get it, that's okay. Just erase it and fix it so you do have the correct answers in your notes. So I want you to go ahead, pull out your homework paper. Tonight you do not have homework, but tomorrow night you have this assignment about today's lesson that we did. So we're going to go ahead right now. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to work on your 2.2 homework.